All right. Hello there, everyone, and greetings from the mountains of northern Albania. I'm here to tell you about my first 4-week class for the fall 2023 session, which is going to be Understanding the Balkans. I had some requests to do something on the Balkans from a previous class, and I'm going to follow through on that. So I'm going to try to approach the Balkans in a way that is my usual focus on politics, of course, but I got other things to talk about in terms of culture, in terms of so many other things, which I also really enjoy talking about. And I'm also going to approach the Balkans in a very kind of regional way. So we're going to start off by talking about a country, the modern version, not the ancient version, that I consider to be a part of the Balkans, but in many ways, where else would it go? We think of it as Southern Europe. I consider it the Balkans, and that is modern Greece. We're going to talk about how Greece played such an influential role in creating the Balkans as they are. We'll do a whole lecture actually on modern Greece because Greece's war for independence in many ways generated a series of events that led to the Balkans looking, well, the way they look today. So we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about the countries that make up the former Yugoslavia. I am, in fact, going to talk about the collapse of the former Yugoslavia. That starts around the 1980s, but I'll talk about history before then, history and politics and society and culture and religion and everything before then. And then we'll talk about, why Yugoslavia fell apart and what that did to the Balkans and why the kind of post-Yugoslavian countries are in fact so different and what things look like 30 years after one of the most violent conflicts of post-World War II Europe. And then we're going to do a whole lecture on a country that almost no one talks about, and we're going to talk about it, and I think you're going to be surprised by just how amazingly interesting it is, and that happens to be Albania. We're going to talk about Albania as its own country and, of course, talk about it in relation to Kosovo because the Kosovars, the Albanians who are in fact in Kosovo, which, depending on where you are, is an independent country or is not, you might think they're just, well, they're all Albanians, but there's a very kind of contested history between the two. And we have to get that right. And we also have to understand, well, more about Albania because, like I said, it's an endlessly interesting place, just like all of the Balkans are. So that's what we're going to cover. And beyond that, like I said, I do focus on politics, as many of you will know, but I've got all sorts of other stuff to talk about in terms of like culture, religion, literature, music, so many other things to talk about. I'll make it a regional course with some specific focuses, and I will do my best to introduce the entire region to you. So at the end, you can say, I took a class on understanding the Balkans, and now I understand the Balkans. Hope to see you there.